everyone, I'm Liz Brown Swanson, and welcome to Spotlight on Our Schools. It's great to have here in our studio the superintendent of the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District, Walker Williams. We always love having you here to bring us up to date on everything going on in the district.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
All right, well, we have lots to talk about because as the new year has kicked in, 2013, let's just start off with just overall what's happening with this as you look into 2013, the challenges that you're facing right now, especially with budget.
Sure. In fact, this is the time of year, we're only midway through this school year, but right now we're planning already for next school year and what this will look like. We start looking at our enrollment trends, we start to look at the budget information coming out of the state, we start working with our principals and our staff about maintaining the programs that we have. The budget's still one of those fickle areas coming out of the state. Almost 80% of our revenue is really state revenue. And we started this year with under one idea that the state was going to cut us mid-year by about $450 per student, more than what they've cut in the past, unless an initiative passed in November. So we had to wait through the initiative process. Prop 30 passed. But I think part of the issue that people are going to have about Prop 30 is it was never intended to give more money to schools. It was to prevent even more drastic cuts. Right. So it was filling a gap in the state budget.
Yeah, no, I thought that there was a lot of, I think, misinformation or interpretation of it, like you say, like we thought this was going to be the answer. So what has it done in terms of helping the district, in terms of are you going to have to make any kind of reductions and
Right now, the way we're looking at it, the governor just brought out his proposed budget in January. It was just about a week or two old, and that's really kind of the signal for schools then about what to do in terms of planning for 13-14, knowing that the situation in Sacramento is going to change, and it's going to change a lot probably between now and June. But the governor signaled actually a complete change in how schools are getting funded in the future, and it almost looks like to us right now that it's creating a situation where there's winners and losers.
Hopefully we're a winner.
Well,
we know we're a winner.
Without getting into the vernacular that they use in the state, there's always going to be a base funding that schools get, and he's talking about bringing that up a little bit, but he's also creating this system where there's going to be more of an emphasis on school districts with low socioeconomic status and English language learners, that they're going to give boost to those districts in terms of additional funds. The old phrase we were using in the past was called weighted student formulas, that the more money was given to certain students based on their needs. They're not using that phrase anymore because apparently it didn't play well in Sacramento, but they're coming up, it's almost the same type of theme. So we have a lot of evaluating to do, analysis to do in this upcoming months to say, what does this really mean to us? And the budget picture in Sacramento is changing because after everybody pays their taxes in April, they'll come back with what they call a May revise and tell us the new scenario in terms of what they're planning for, if anything has changed since what he issued in January with his proposed budget.
All right, I think for parents watching, they just want to know when their kids go to school, are they still getting, everything that what they expect, which is, of course, you have, one of the best school districts in the country, really.
And actually, that's been probably since 2007 and 8 when the state budget went into the tank. The ongoing battle for the Board of Education, all of us in the business, how do you maintain a high quality program, the kind of services, the classroom, teachers that you have, all of the kind of instructional support that you have, and do it in this environment where the budget's being reduced. And I think they have noticed changes in the last few years because we've had to make budget reductions, but for the most part, we can look around and say our students are still performing at a high level, they're still doing wonderful things, we still have instructional programs, but that's been the battle since 2007 and 8 is to maintain as much as we can.
All right, in the meantime, as you're waiting and hoping maybe for more money from the state, you also said you're working off your reserves.
We are. With the reserves, it's that savings account that you have, and the board had obviously done a great job in terms of being able to manage the finances, build reserves. We've been, and again, I know this is getting kind of complicated, we've been getting where thankfully we had reserves because even with the money that the state owed us, they didn't pay us on time. They called deferrals because they didn't have money in their bank accounts. They would basically say something well, I owe you a paycheck in March, but I'm not going to send you the money until April, May, June, or July. So we've had to work with our reserves and our money in order to be able to pay our bills, pay our staff, and make sure our programs continue.
You seem optimistic, though.
Actually, for the first time, I think since I've been superintendent, the state news it hasn't been, I'm taken away from you type message. It's more like the governor came out and said the state budget's in the black, the budget is balanced, they're looking forward to the future. But it's been such a long problem at the state that it's going to take years to dig out of it. His budget plan is really a 7-year plan. So it's not something that we're going to see kind of money raining down on schools. It's over a period of time he's looking at making us whole.
All right, we'll keep staying tuned. District goals and objectives as we go into the new year as well. Talk about those.
The primary goal, we can always talk about budget, but the primary goal is this whole transition that all of the school districts in California are going through, and that we're over the next 2 or 3 years, is the transition from what we're currently doing, called the current academic standards that the state has, to the Common Core state standards. The state has evaluated, they've looked about what's going on with their programs, they've determined statewide, is this really preparing students for the future? Is it really preparing kids for the colleges? Is it preparing them for the workplace? So they've evaluated those instructional programs, and we're making this transition. So by 2014-15, we're supposed to go through this process. We're going to have a new accountability system, new instructional strategies. It's going to be more rigor. It's going to be a little tougher. So we're going through right now what we call the awareness phase in terms of bringing teachers on board, staff on board of what this looks like. We're going out to PTA meetings, talking about this, about what this looks like and how this is going to be different. So what's exciting about this is that we're really focused on the instructional program. This is the vehicle that we're using now to talk about what we're doing. And even though we can rave about all of the results that we have currently, is about how do you take it to the next level? How do you improve on that?
Set the bar higher here in Palos Verdes.
So we have 3 goals. That's our primary goal. We brought on Chief Academic Officer Martin Griffin. Joan Romano, who was the principal of Lanada Bay, is now in the district office as director. They're gearing all of this up in terms of getting PV from where we are now to this new Common Core state standards by 2014-15.
Okay. As you're always working to improve, this brings me into my next question is to focus on something that came out in the fall, I guess, with Marilyn Intermediate School receiving what's called a PI designation, which is a program improvement status, I guess. Explain what that means, and I know there was some concern from parents.
No, there is, and rightfully so. The accountability system that's currently in the state is, we call it the Academic Performance Index, it's the API. Based on that result, the minimum standard that the state wants everybody to hit, the expectation everybody should get a score of 800, all schools. Almost all of our schools are either over 900 or right at 900. Merrill Est is one of those. They have a score of 910, which really in our world means they got an A on the test. We have passed, they're a high-performing school. But the federal government has a system called No Child Left Behind.
Right.
And one of the flawed systems in No Child Left Behind is this assumption that all students, no matter what they bring to the table, whether they have a disability, a language barrier, they just enrolled in school in the last 6 months into your school system, that all schools kids will be proficient, 100% proficient by, I think it's 2014-15. And so they've been increasing this benchmark every year, saying slowly but surely we're going to get everybody to 100%, which is flawed. There's no system in the world that's going to make that work. And so Merrill Est missed by one of their, what we call a significant subgroup, by all of 4 students. Even though they're a high-performing school, they missed by 4 students. And that opened up this door in terms of program improvement. And what it means is that you have to look at your school site plan, and it's an opportunity to look at what you're doing and say, okay, yes, we're high performing, but are there things that we can do better? And that's what they're currently going through in that process. We're hoping across the state that No Child Left Behind is reauthorized, that it goes away. The concept that you want to make sure every student performs as best they can, that's always one of the things that PV wants to do. But this assumption that we're trying to reach an unrealistic goal out there, and then every district's in that boat, technically in 2 years, every district could be in program improvement under these current rules.
So the fact, though, that all the parents received a letter that said you have the option because you're a PI school, now if you want a choice to another middle school, why would that even need to take place? They got an A on the test. Why would?
Because they may feel like that they can get a better education for their child. There might be something that a school offers that they think will be stronger for them. It might be geographic. It may be more convenient for them. So we probably had, I think, and again, don't hold me exactly, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 students make that choice about transferring.
Just based on that?
Yeah, yes.
So when would you lose that designation problem? You don't get retested?
Well, actually, the board voted last night because a lot of this is associated with taking a federal categorical money called Title I.
Right.
So as long as you're not taking Title I money, then you're not having to deal with these rules. Now, Title I money has come in handy in schools because we use it to help students that aren't achieving and to bolster them, provide intervention programs and things. But the board voted last night actually not to allocate Title I money to Merrill Est anymore in the future. And so what that will do.
So then you don't have to meet that criteria.
But what I think what is important, we still want to say we're going to help every student achieve
Right.
to their potential. So whether we're taking Title I money or not, we're not losing that need to make sure we're moving every student along as best we can. And then the bigger discussion over the next 4 or 5 months as we do budget development is, do we accept Title I money at all as a school district? But for right now, they voted last night not to allocate to Merrill Est.
Right, but the concept, like, you know, in a way, you want to offer students a level playing field, but not every student can achieve the same thing. So how do you balance that? I know parents, you know, if Johnny's getting a B, they may not be able to get the A, but
Right.
then, I mean, how
But
do
really, you almost have to, as a school, you almost say that you take every student from where they are, and we should be able to show we made progress.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be that everybody's going to get an A in the test, because none
doesn't
of
work
us
like
will.
that.
Okay, but what you want to do is that you've taken every student from where they started, and you've been able to show that they can make progress.
Right. I'm going to switch gears now, talk about some things that have been making headlines in the local newspaper.
Sure.
And I also want to point out before I go there that the district sends out this measuring progress, which gives a lot of information of new things happening, and it's a terrific resource for the community to find out sort of what you're working on. You have a nice message in there and gives you all kinds of information. But looking at things that have been appearing in the news recently, or sadly, the tragic death of a PV High senior in a tragic accident that just recently took place. You know, everyone's sad and sends their sympathies to the family, but for the schools now, you know, it puts the schools in crisis. You need counselors. How does that all work when you have students that have family tragedies, things that happen?
It's probably the hardest thing any school administrator, district administrator, teacher has to deal with, is obviously the death of a child or a student on one of their campuses. And we know when it happens that it hits the campus hard. We have what we call a crisis team. Lynn LaBoucha, who's our administrator of pupil services, oversees it. And when these events happen, and you know, you wish you never had to deal with this at all as an administrator, but when they happen, we send in a crisis team into a school district, into the school to work with both students and staff. It includes counselors, psychologists, people that have been trained. We make the opportunity available for students or staff to come and talk it through. We know it's obviously our primary job is to teach English, math, science, but when these things happen, people, you know, need to have support. They need to have people come there and work through it. So that's been going on at Palos Verdes High School for the past week in terms of providing those services. It's obviously even harder when one of the staff members is an uncle of the child or related to the child, and the child also has siblings in other schools. It all just, so thankfully we have this program. We have a very talented group of psychologists and counselors, and that we can make this resource available to them to benefit students.
I know we were saying earlier that it seems like every year somehow our community gets hit with something that's very difficult and tragic. And
I don't think it's unique to just this school district. It probably happens in most, but it just, I'm repeating, I wish I could go my whole career and I didn't have to hear about this or deal with that, that everybody's safe, but you know, it does happen. So we just want to make sure we have systems in place to assist when we have these tragedies.
And in terms of crisis management, you also have to have emergency preparedness in the wake of just what happened in Newtown. You know, everybody's thinking about, you know, taking more safety measures, more precautions. You actually recently had to deal with a lockdown in the district. So how are we getting more prepared to deal with any kind of emergency on our campuses?
You know, we have a great emergency preparedness plan. We have safety plans. We have drills. And you know, when you go through, and you probably remember, you go through the usual fire drill. Oh, it's just another fire drill, and you go through. But we've actually practiced these things. But you take these opportunities when you have these situations to, are there things we can do better? We have great partnership, for instance, with the LA County Sheriff Department and the Palos Verdes Estates Police Department. In fact, I met with their officers yesterday because we're coming to a district management meeting next Wednesday to talk about school safety. Yes, we did a great job with the lockdowns. Yes, it works. We know we can do that if we have to. But are there other things that we could be doing to make sure we're as safe as possible? We work with our PTAs. One of their positions is the fourth vice presidents that are kind of in charge of emergency preparedness. They meet with our staff. We're having principals look at their facilities. Are there things that we could do to make this a little bit safer on the campuses and make it a little work? And unfortunately, you look at those poor people in Connecticut, they had a system where you had a buzz to get in. They had a secure, and it still didn't prevent that kind of
Right.
tragedy. So we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to be as safe as possible and to look through it. So it's on the top of our agenda. And I really want to thank the Palos Verdes State Police Department and the Kelly County Sheriff, because they're working with us as partners to make this all work. It's really a community effort.
Absolutely. And for kids out there, like even my own son, I've noticed, he's a little bit more worried than he's ever been. And I don't remember having to think about these things when I was growing up, going to school. We just didn't. So it's that extra stress on the kids. They shouldn't have to worry about being safe in a school.
No, the school should be one of the safest places
Right.
in their whole world that they come. And that's really what we want. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're...
Moving on to more headlines that we've been watching, of course, the rivalry, in a way, is an old story between PV High and Peninsula High. And you can have a healthy rivalry, as we know, but things got a little out of hand. And so talk about how you in the district are really working on resolving that with solutions to, we can all get along.
Right. And actually, you can see in the Measuring Progress, and people get it, it's one of the examples. We started with getting student leaders from each of the schools together and talk about what's going on. And I've had people, I've only been in the district about 11 years, and I've had people, this has been going on for 30 years, and said, this is not new. But at some point, the rivalry's healthy, rivalry's good, but at some point, you don't want it to be unhealthy. You don't want it to go overboard. You don't want to we're focusing our time and energy on unhealthy rivalry. So the students were great. They had great discussions. They tend to know each other. They've come out from the various intermediate schools. They talked through some strategies. They put some strategies together about various activities they could do together in terms of promoting that. We've had leaders from the different booster clubs get together, the PTAs talk about we're going to look at putting meetings together with some of the teaching staff about it's really, yes, rivalry is good, but at the same point, if it gets unhealthy, then what we can do to really work together, show that this really is about we're all in the same boat together, and how do we make the best high school program? And we do. We have an outstanding high school program. You can't lose going to either high school.
Right. And
so just like and people are the students are currently making choices now about which high school they're going to. So we have 2 outstanding high schools. So there's so many things to brag about that we don't want to get caught on that the rivalry got a little bit overblown. We want to just bring it back and tone it down a little bit. And
that both schools have the name Palos Verdes in their name, right? You've got, and we all come from the same families. As I was saying to you earlier, my 2 oldest that are now in college went to Palos Verdes High School, and my freshman is now at Peninsula. And so I'm now been on both campuses, and they're both amazing schools. But for my choice, I wanted that traditional bell schedule for my freshman because that works how he learns. Where the other 2, the block schedule. And I think those are the kinds of things that we're so lucky to have those choices.
And that's really, it's the parents and the students sitting down and what's the best fit for me. Where in almost all districts around the area, you get this choice. So it's really looking at a program saying this works for my family, this works for my student, this is where I want to go, and that's one of the benefits of our program.
So we have Sea Kings and Panther sweatshirts all in the same closet. It's all
you're not the only one.
I know. There's a lot of my friends. We split families, whatever you want to call it. And so because right now you are going through enrollment and getting the 8th graders to look at schools, they're visiting. So let's, if your terms of parents are trying to figure out what choice to make and work with their students, what do they need to consider?
They need to look at both schools and the programs that they offer. You've mentioned one example, the block schedule versus the traditional schedule. Is that something that best meets the needs of the student going to that school? You need to look at the programs being offered, or the string, or if they're involved in extracurricular activities or sports, about what are the programs that they have. It really comes down to, it's almost like choosing a college. It's like, what's the best fit for me? What fits my personality, my learning style, the kind of activities. And that's really what you need. You can go onto the website and look for information. They're both having activities at school to come onto the campus. I can guarantee both principals are willing to sit down and talk to anybody about their programs. Nick Stephanie and Mitzi Kress are great principals, and they're available to talk to anybody or their staff about what's going on at their schools. It's take this opportunity over. The deadline is February 19th, so what do we have? We have about 3 weeks. Is take this opportunity to learn about both schools, visit the schools, and make a decision that best fits your needs.
And in the end, because the kids have the choice, does it tend to be, like you say, geography? Kids tend to choose the school where it's closer to them.
Right.
Even though we all, as parents, drive all over the hill.
Right. It doesn't break perfectly even, but geographic is, the PVIS students, the large percentage of them go to PV High School. Ridgecrest tends to go primarily to Penn High, but it's not 100%
Right.
people. And the Merrill-less families tend to divide half and half, depending on the schools, or a little bit less than that. But it's just, so it's, part of it is geography. It's convenient. It's easy. Plus, if all your friends and the people you know are going to a particular school, then you tend to follow with that also.
Yeah, I know. Usually that does happen. Although I have to say, in my son's case, most of his friends ended up going to PV High, but they still all get together. Any myths, though, you wanted to dispel? I know as a parent that went through it, I remember first hearing there's just sort of this feeling like, oh, Penn's more academic, PV's more athletic. Do you? I mean, you can get everything at both schools.
You can. And our job, and again, that's one of the emphasis of the Common Core State Standards, our job is to prepare in our K-12 system for the student to leave and be prepared for that next level. And I can guarantee you that students leaving both PV High School and Penn High are prepared to go to the next level.
Absolutely.
And so it really is more of that personal fit about what works for them.
Both high schools are ranked, what, in the top 50 of the state?
Well,
and then, or, I don't know,
they both were named in national magazines last year. Penn was named in several of them, but PV High is also. PV High is right now being, up for what they call the Distinguished School Honor.
Terrific.
So they all have a lot of
Right.
great recognition.
Yeah.
The information's on the web. We
Right.
try to keep it up, especially with things about enrollment, preschool programs, things like that. It's a resource for
Well, how many students are in the district now?
We're less than 12,000, but we're probably somewhere, I'm thinking around 11,700, 800, somewhere like that.
Okay, and you've been in this district now for
I
20
think
years?
about 11 years.
Oh, 11 years.
Yeah.
And so you've
Seems like
seen
20
enrollment.
now.
No, I'm thinking, no, that's true. But you've seen enrollment, does it just sort of kind of goes up and
We've
down?
actually, it hasn't fluctuated a lot. Probably during that time, it may have dropped 100, grown 100, 200. It's probably been in and around the range of 12,000, 11,500 to 12,000, probably for most of that time.
You've seen lots of new programs, resources, anything exciting you want to talk about and mention that's new as we had 2013, anything fun? I know, for example, how cool is it that NASA is going to be communicating with Soliato?
Oh, right.
Things like that.
That's really, I want to be there when that happens. It's the third grade students at Soliato, through support by the Peninsula Education Foundation and some other money that they've been able to get, are going to be able to communicate with the International Space Station. Was supposedly actually going to happen last week, I believe, or this week. It's been moved down to February.
Right.
It's really an example of more than, let's come to class, let's go through the traditional instruction. This is really
Right.
hands-on, seeing how this works and how the system. So the third graders there, Kevin Allen's has done a great job at Soliato. They were a distinguished school last year. This is another thing that he's at. But we could go around and talk about different things like that. But it's the type of robotics, the STEM programs that the foundation is supporting at both the high schools and even the intermediate schools, and the competitions they're in. The robotics, and they say it's amazing when you watch our students. And
Absolutely.
You go, I know this student's prepared to go to college.
Give us a little update on construction. When I was talking about new resources too, for example, Penn High's got a new pool got in,
Right.
put in, and
We're actually within days, and I'm just,
Yeah.
that the pool will be ready. They're just what we call it the punch list. They're finishing up on the very few. So the pool's right there. We're almost done with the pool. It's great. It's gone through, obviously the community has been a partner with us in terms of raising money. The board has put in money to that. Cities have donated to this cause to make this pool. Because we look at all our campuses as a community resource, kind of the Parks and Rec department for the whole campus. And so the fact that obviously our teams will use it, but it's available there for all of the
Nice.
community. So we're within a few days of the pool being available to us. And I believe the other biggest project right now is PV High classroom project, and that should be done by the end of this calendar year.
and these were funded through measures RNS.
RNS, right. And
Right.
we're almost at the end of that program because of all of the construction taking place, the new buildings and everything. We're pretty much done with that program.
So what's on your wish list for new projects up ahead? Do we have anything?
Well, a
coming
lot
up?
of the deferred maintenance and things is now that you've completed these projects and you've built these new buildings and everything, it's keeping them up. It's maintaining. It's like anyone with your house. You need to just make sure you're keeping up. So in fact, the board had this discussion last night, is having what we call the deferred maintenance list to make sure we're keeping up, keeping the classrooms as nice as possible, the facilities as nice as possible.
Right. You get a lot of help through the Ed Foundation. We got to always talk about the Peninsula Education Foundation. I think they gave 54 grants to teachers. Give us a little plug on what's
The
going on there.
foundation, I can't say enough for it. The foundation has stepped up every year. I think since 2007 and 2008, to give you an example, we've lost from the state revenue about $500 per student. since 2000. Even with what's going on this year, we're so
multiply
over
that by 10,000
Yeah,
students.
it's like
That's
$6 million
that's
a
a lot of
year.
money.
So it's a lot of money. And so the foundation is every year they've increased it. Plus, every year it's just harder and harder, obviously, to get to that higher figure. But they've been able to do it. I can't encourage people enough to donate to the foundation, because that money actually comes to the school district to support programs at the school site, every school, whether it's more teachers, whether the STEM programs I mentioned, whether it's elementary music, our counselors. We wouldn't have the same number of counselors or the College Career Center at ours if it wasn't for the foundation supporting this. So
Right.
I want to applaud them everywhere I go, because they've been one of those partners that helped us make this work as the state budget has gone into the tank.
This community certainly supports the schools, and we understand it's an incredible district, and also through volunteers. I mean, you get a lot of help with your PTA and all of that always, so.
Right. The PTA, the booster clubs, it's the Major REM that the voters passed, it's all helped us survive. Even though you can't make up for these drastic cuts from the state, it's helped us survive.
Looking over the past year, 2012, are there any big achievements that you're really proud of? I mean, every day is an achievement.
You know, and I really go back to, one of the things that we started last year was really sitting down, and the board, it was a board goal to sit down and talk to stakeholder groups, talk to our principals about where are we going in the future and what is it we need to accomplish. Even though we have this budget crisis, we had a lot of great conversations last year about the quality of our program, what other things could we be doing, knowing that we have these budget issues. And we had different meetings, and out of that came this board goal about we can't just keep falling back on, yes, there's budget problems, and we're not going to keep looking to the future. So much of what was really exciting about last year, especially at the end of the year, were those discussions about where we're going in the future, and that ended up being a board goal and has continued that work going. It really kind of brought back what's our purpose, what's our primary reason for existence, and that's to make sure we're offering the best educational program possible.
If you were to give a report card right now for PVP USD, what would you give it?
You know,
You were a teacher once.
yes, I was.
You're always a teacher, but.
You know, when you look at the overall program, I can't hide from the fact that we're getting an A, but I always want to put a disclaimer on that, but I don't want that to where you can rest on your laurels and say, well, I got an A on the test, so I
Right.
can't improve, I can't do. So yeah, I think overall, despite all of the stuff that's going on with budget issues and all, the students continue to perform at the highest levels. They're doing a great job. But I don't want to just stop there.
Right.
And I think that's part of this discussion with this goal number one with the board is, so what else can we be doing?
Right. Talking about things that we're doing, I just want to plug a few things coming up in the school community. We were
Great.
talking about, first of all, is Palos Verdes High School is throwing their Brian's Walk. It's in honor of Brian Booth, who lost his life. He died, had Ewing sarcoma, and I guess he passed away last summer. And they're going to have that walk on February 16th. So, and they're having a big carnival for the communities invited, so mark your calendars. You can go on to PV High's website for that information. Again, that was going to be Brian's Walk on February 16th. And then Peninsula High School is running their 11th annual Walk for Life, and they always do it in honor of somebody in the community, in the Panther community that's passed. And I know that both of these will go to causes, different causes, right? So the Panthers Walk is on the February 27th at 1 o'clock. Getting my schools mixed up still.
And I would encourage people to participate. It's great. I saw the enthusiasm, the student involvement.
I mean, last year, I think the Walk for Life brought in like $90,000.
So I would encourage everybody to get involved and be part of the cause. This really the kind of school system we have requires a team effort, and we have a great community and a great support system. And thankfully, that's what's made our schools so strong. And I just want to thank the community for the support that they're providing to us, all of our partnerships, whether it's the cities or the Sheriff Department or the Palos Verdes Estates, the PEF. Thank you for being part of this.
I want to thank you for being a great leader.
Thank you.
All right. We will have you back in here. I'm Liz Brown Swanson with Walker Williams. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Spotlight on Our Schools. See you next time.